Lalji is joining us. You're watching the stream. That's a sweet wall behind you, eh? Are you at a tavern of some sort?
No, I'm just in our conference room, and we've been doing hits here all day. Today we spent, between myself, Carol Wagland, Dave Naylor, we probably did 20 hits with different affiliates around the country. So we have this conference room, and they've just set this up for us. So
nice.
I could have been out on Canal Street, but there would have been all sorts of distractions, my friend. You wouldn't want that. I should have worn my beads, though. I apologize.
How are the beignets? Have you had a few? Have you wandered down there? You picked a couple up?
I've had a couple. In fact, when we were at the media party, they had burger beignets. So like 2 beignets and with burger little slider deal in the middle. That was a good beignet.
Oh, now we had this talk earlier about food, and Barney was anti-gator, crawfish,
Gumbo.
Right? Gumbo.
I'm the same.
Really?
Yeah. Well, look, I'll do gumbo, and I love jambalaya, but I'm limited on the different types of fish I eat, right? So we actually went to this place, and David Sanchez was with us and had some crawfish, and it was like he had to break the whole thing, and it got all gritty, and he's like, I'm not feeling this. So, dude, listen, let me tell you something. This is not a place where you can get a lot of healthy options. There was a 25-person lineup outside of Popeye's Louisiana Chicken before it opened the other day. And you can go into a Foot Locker here, my friend, and find a 5X shirt. No problem. Right? That's how it rolls here.
Hot tip. There it is. That's
you need the 5X.
That's the strip.
You need a 5X. Come to Nollins.
Let's go Super Bowl to end it. Let's start with the CFL. Okay. Has there been in this week and what we're hearing with guys, signing players? Is there one that jumps out at you that caught you by surprise?
Well, not necessarily one name, but certainly the volume, right? I mean, there were a couple of the people that came over from Toronto to Edmonton that I thought might not necessarily make a move, whether it be Smetsy. I had a sense they were going to go big after Jake Ceresna, and with Demetrius Maxey being in Edmonton, I knew there was going to be a real possibility that happened. But I think the overall volume of players the Elks decided to go after and got them, that was surprising to me. The moves to Hamilton, from a player like Kenny Lawler, that was a bit of a shock. I was surprised that Calgary didn't land Geno Lewis, right? I really thought that would happen. My understanding is he actually took less money to go to Ottawa just for other personal reasons. But yeah, I more that Edmonton wound up adding, and I saw this in 2019 when Ed Hervey was in his first year as the Lions GM, where he spent a lot of money on day one. But so much of it was on Mike Riley, and he spent it. I think he spent it much better this time around. You get 5 new Canadian starters, arguably, that's pretty impressive in terms of a roster makeover and adding depth. And and then just to rebuild your entire defensive line like that, I thought was pretty impressive too.
What the salary cap going up and announcing it this week at a weird time. Any insight? You got any inside baseball on what happened there? Yeah,
so the two sides, when they went through the last CBA and they talked about when the escalators would kick in and what that had to look like, and no one really was expecting it to happen this year. And then you have a December 31st year end, and they had to get the reported information to them by January 15th. So then, you go back and you get different information, and then you give it to the Players Association and say, hey, we have $18 million. This has kicked in an increase here in revenue. How do you want to spend it? And the reason I say that is because in the CBA, there were some options, some buckets that they could have put it in. They could have simply put it on the salary cap, which at this point it looks like may happen. That's what they put out in the release. But you could put it in training camp stipends. You could put it in pension contributions. You could put it in postseason benefits. And from the PA standpoint, I think they wanted to put it everywhere and some things that hadn't been discussed. So the league said, no, you can't do that, right? We only discussed this. So then the PA said, fine, we'll put it in the salary cap, which really isn't the best thing for the players because it touches the fewest people, right? So the timing of it was certainly off. I don't think that was the league's fault, right? I think the PA, they had 5 days to deal with it. They took all 5 days, and then they put out their press release. They could have done it earlier, but hard to blame them as well. I think they're going to go back and change the dates on it and change what the year ends look like, but I truly don't believe it was contrived. There's some people that say, oh, the league did this on purpose. so that the teams wouldn't spend the money, and that's just not what happened, right? So it was awkward timing for sure, but the first time they've had to deal with this with extra revenue.
I got a question now as we go on that sort of the front office stuff. Any news on the commissioner, where that plan is? Any names? Anything? I mean, what I've heard is not cool,
Sharky,
but
this is crazy slow. Sharky, this is crazy slow. To the point where I'm not sure they've completely nailed down their process for whether or not they need a search firm, what the final priorities of criteria are, or whether they're just going to handle it from a board perspective. Like, it's not even near the point where they're doing interviews. Like, they're not close to that yet. So it's taken a lot longer than it needs to, and quite frankly, it wouldn't shock me. Like, I've heard some different things too, but from the most important people, it wouldn't shock me if the season kicked off and Randy Ambrosie was still the commissioner.
I have actually heard there's two different camps within the Board of Governors and that group. That one wants somebody they can completely control and to do what they want to do, and somebody wants the other group wants somebody that's going to go out and elevate and do something on their own, and that's part of the problem.
Puppet cowboy.
That's right. We've got that kind of concept.
I think all of them want both. I think all of them want somebody who's equipped to drive revenue, because that was the single biggest concern they had with what was going on with Randy Ambrosie. Now all of a sudden we see $18 million in revenue, but costs were also escalating, right? And sometimes, look, I'm a person that believes you got to spend money to make money. Lord knows my wife feels that way, but that wasn't, you weren't playing that, right? Good thing she doesn't listen. So, he just showed that he was able to bring a lot in. They've also been spending a lot. So I think they want someone who's equipped to bring in additional revenue without necessarily spending a ton. And I think they want a level of control. I've always said this is a very difficult board to work for because it's only 9, right? Like, as powerful as Jerry Jones is, Jerry Jones does not have the influence that a Scott Mitchell or a Wade Miller has, right? Like, those guys carry much more weight. You can form an alliance with 2 and carry a lot of weight, right? Like, it's just like that. So it's a tough group, and they do want a level of control. There's no doubt.
Okay, we can talk a lot of CFL next week with everything that's going to go down. There's only one Super Bowl this year, and it's coming Sunday.
Hey, and I'm glad Saskatchewan got Micah Johnson back in. I thought that was important. With him and Mike Rose, that was great. And Tavon Campbell is going to be the sneaky signing of the year. That was impressive for them to get that done and not even have to dip into regular free agency for it.
And the passport is nice looking for him as well. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm on the Eagles, mostly because I despise. What are they going to do?
Because the Eagles were green. They're green. I get it.
Yeah. What are they going to do to shut down KC? Are they going to be? They're probably going to shut down Saquon. So what's going to happen here?
Well, look, in order for Philadelphia to win this game, they have to take a page out of Tampa Bay's playbook in 2020. They have to be able to get to Patrick Mahomes inside of 2 seconds. They've got to get him off his spot and move him. If you give him 2.5 seconds, he gets through his first progression and he sets up how he's going to escape. He can see the escape lanes and set himself up. If you take 2.5, he's going to beat you. If you can get there fast, like that, like happened in 2020, there's going to be problems for Kansas City, right? They can't just lean on their run game. The other thing with Philadelphia is they're the best screen defending team in the league. And we know how Kansas City and Andy Reid love their screen game to get the ball out quick because those guys tackle so well. So they have to get to him immediately. And they have the ability to do that. But if they don't, Kansas City's going to win this game. And, for me, I think Steve Spagnuolo is going to be able to find a way to ensure that Saquon works for his yardage. You're not going to see the big 60-yard touchdown run. He may get 100, but it's going to take over 20 carries. But the big issue, the only mismatch on the field is Eagles D-line, Kansas City offensive tackles. That's the only mismatch. The other mismatch in this game is Kansas City's coaching staff, right? So, if it comes down to the fourth quarter of a close game, Andy Reid and Steve Spagnuolo are going to win. Full stop. But if they can prevent it from being close with what that defensive line does, different story.
That's the prediction we've heard from everybody is if Philadelphia is not up by 14 or 21 early, they can't catch them. They can't run them down from behind.
I think,
Well, you
like,
know why that's so hard? There's no team that has fewer possessions in a game than Kansas City. There was a time when teams would slow the game down because they didn't want the Chiefs to be explosive. The Chiefs now slow games down and just wait until the fourth quarter and then do their thing. So it's hard to run away from these guys.
like the greatest show on turf. It's
Yeah.
like, just don't let them have the ball.
Yeah.
Just keep it slow. So how much will we see? You talked about it, the coaching mismatch here.
I think you're going to see it, right? And look, I'm not a person who doesn't think Nick Sirianni is a good coach. He is, and it's like any aggressive coach, whether you're Sirianni, Quinn, Campbell. If you go for it a few times and you don't get it, even though that's your DNA and that's what's led you to your success, you're going to get criticized, right? And how much you're going to make Jalen Hurts throw the football, right? Earlier in the year, right, he was averaging 33. The first 4 games, he was averaging 33 passes a game. Like, they have to find a way to let Saquon win this game for them, right? And, so I think you will see both teams I think both teams are going to try to a point to control the game and take the air out of the ball, right? So, but like I said, I just think when you give Andy Reid 2 weeks to prepare and when you give Steve Spagnuolo 2 weeks to prepare, they are the best at what they do. That is the best offensive coordinator and the best defensive coordinator in football.
That's what scares me a bit in it. But you coach football. Like, let's say we're both coaching we're coaching this game here, Farhan. If we're on the Eagles, we probably say, you know what? They're going to take away Barkley. So let's let them have that. Now, Jalen, are you going to run? Are you going to throw? That's what I'm thinking in my, he's got is he going to be the Super Bowl MVP? Because he's going to have to do it, I think.
Well, and listen, Jalen can. You go back 2 years, he carried that team. 300 passing yards, 3 rushing touchdowns. He had 70 yards rushing on 15 carries. The other 3 Eagles running backs combined for 45 yards, right? He is capable. I have a lot of time for Jalen Hurts. So if he's got to throw it, he can. Now, he's limited in terms of where he likes to throw the football, in my opinion. There's certain throws that he's just not effective making. But you want to push the ball down the field to A.J. Brown, he can. You want to find Dallas Goedert over the middle, within certain ranges, he can. And he can pull the ball and run. And I think that's when their running game is the most effective. And I think he's going to need to do that early in the game. Pull the ball and get to the edge so that the backside of that defense can't squeeze down on Barkley the entire time.
So there's no mismatch, let's say Goddard, or there's no mismatch that you can see Eagles receivers, secondary of Kansas City, or vice versa?
No, I don't think so. I think that Trent McDuffie is the best DB playing in this game, right? So you can match him up against A.J. Brown, and I'll take my chances there. And they got Watson back last week, right? So they're healthier there. I think their safeties are fine. I mean, Dallas Goedert's an effective player, but he's not Travis Kelce. He's not elite tight end. So I don't think there's mismatches there. And on the other side, I mean, Kansas City is the first team, they were the only team to get into the playoffs with no 1,000-yard receivers and no 1,000-yard rushers. But they do have some players that could go off at any moment, right? Hopkins could go off. Kelce could go off. Xavier Worthy could go off, right? So they have pieces there, but we just haven't seen it all year. So Philadelphia's got some real youth at corner, but man, those guys are good. There are some suggestions that maybe you can beat this team at safety, right? That maybe Philadelphia's got some weak spots at safety, but I don't know. I think they're pretty good back there, and they're deep.
That's a pretty thin margin to pick from if you're going after one guy, a safety or 2 safeties. That's not much of a hole.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, Cook is an average cover guy. There probably are. Each team has maybe one average cover safety, but these teams don't go 4 across with elite receivers at every spot, right? So, I don't know that plays itself. I don't know that is what takes this game over.
Okay, in closing, I want to ask you, if a guy was going to sprinkle, a guy that I know,
which I just did.
What's a good prop bet that you like for this one?
Oh, boy, I don't have the props in front of me, but I would probably say Jalen Hurts to score the first touchdown, like he did in the last game, and you get down into the goal line, and you're going to get the tush push, right? So I think that's reasonable. I think that's probably the first one. And what was it? I saw the rushing yards on Jalen Hurts at 36.5. I think he's going over. And overall, because of the lack of possessions, I think the game hits the under.
Under 48.5.
Ooh.
Take the under. All right. Well,
all right. Okay.
Enjoy yourself there, Farhan. Next week's a busy week. When do you get back? When do you land back in Canada?
I get home Monday, 7 a.m. flight out of here after the game.
Oh, I'm sure the airport will be awesome.
Easy to get out. Easy piece of cake.
Have fun. All right. Thanks, Farhan.
I'll be at a 4 o'clock airport for sure. 4 a.m. airport call.
Have a good one.
Enjoy.
See you, boys.